I first want to say thank you very much to AEPEA for inviting me to come speak. My claim to fame in South Africa is probably writing standards. And when we first started, there was no energy efficiency standards for buildings and no energy efficiency regulation. So my claim to fame was really driving that. Just to put on the other hat though, I'm also a chairperson of the TC 301, which is the Energy Management Technical Committee. So we mirror the ISO one, and that they are responsible for the 50,001 series. So under me, I also do the 50,001, so it's now called SANS ISO, so it's South African National Standard and ISO 50,001. And we were one of the first countries to do an MNV standard. We've got a SANS 50,010, I know the ISO one's 50,015. So I'm going to speak to you mainly about building regulations and building standards. So just so you know, put it in context, I also do the sort of the 50,000 side. So what was our energy efficiency journey? In South Africa, what we have is we've got a national development plan. We have, from the Department of Energy, we've got the National Energy Efficiency Strategy. We've got things from the Department of Public Works. We've got things from the Department of Environmental Affairs, which is the greenhouse gas reporting, the carbon tax. And then the Department of Science and Technology have just recently done a paper on the state of energy efficiency in South Africa. So you take all of these things and all of these government imperatives and we say, well, okay, so every strategy needs an action plan. Otherwise, that's all it is. It's a strategy on a piece of paper. We say, well, how do we get these strategies? And the one way to get these strategies into reality is by helping with sort of implementation plans and with action plans. Somebody mentioned the first fuel, and as energy efficiency being the first fuel. And the first part of National Energy Efficiency Strategy is that energy efficiency is the first fuel. So it's the unused energy that you can really save. The best energy efficiency is not using energy at all. So, just so you know, I get accused of talking in numbers and mnemonics. I sound like a computer because I speak in code. So, when I talk about NBR, it's the National Building Regulation. National Building Regulation in South Africa for X is the Sustainability Regulation. XA, SANS 10400 XA. So SANS 10400 is our deemed to satisfy. XA is energy efficiency in water, energy efficiency in buildings, sorry. And I'll talk about SANS 1544, which is the Energy Performance Certificate Standard. Okay, hopefully it all makes sense after, because you're looking at me like I'm still speaking in code. Is everybody with me in code? Okay. So, when I start speaking numbers, just raise your hand and say, please use words, use your big words. Okay. So, some history of energy efficiency in buildings. In 1997, obviously, we signed the Kyoto Protocol, and our first national energy efficiency strategy came out, where it said that we must save 15% of energy up to 2014 was our original goal. Then SANS 204 was an original energy efficiency standard that we wrote for buildings, and that was published in 2008. The Green Building Council was established in South Africa in 2007, so all of this stuff was all coming together. Oh, by the way, I was there doing this then, okay, so I've got a really high EQ, because a long longevity in this business. And finally, with all this journey, we had our National Building Regulation XA, which is for the energy efficiency in building, was promulgated at the end of 2011, just before we hosted COP17 in Durban. So that's how everything fitted in together. So just a little bit of history. We then, in 2015, we wrote the Energy Performance Certificates Standard, and in 2016 we signed the Paris Accord. So now we are redrafting 10400 XA, which I'll go into detail in a moment. We are looking at 10400 XB, which will be water efficiency for buildings. So there's already a standard being written For that, it's going to go out for public comment. So the next step in buildings will be water efficiency. And 10400XC, just so that you know, in the future will be construction waste. So we're looking at the whole of sustainability in buildings. So basically, when you look at the National Building Regulation, that tells you sort of what to do, and then obviously the standards say how to do it, so it's you're deemed to satisfy. And I'm sure it works similarly in Kenya. So, okay, I'm really don't want to bore you. So, when we looked at National Building Regulation XA, and we looked at the standards, we analysed buildings. We looked at the biggest use for energy in buildings. The first one was hot water, and then the other one was thermal comfort. Because again, when do you turn energy on? We're sitting in this room. When would we turn something on?
Getting hot.
Yeah, when you're not comfortable. So what you look at it is say, well, if you're comfortable, you won't get up and turn something on. And that's what we talk about, this whole sort of passive design, and the first fuel concept is trying to make this building comfortable enough without having to turn something on. And then obviously the hot water supply. So that's really what we looked at. The first start that we had, again, any standard that you write cannot be inflationary, and it cannot put anybody out the market. So we found the techniques that we were using to build were obviously not energy efficient, but you can't like bomb in this sort of Rolls-Royce type of standards to start with. You have to do an introductory standard so that you don't leave anybody behind in this market. Sorry, I'm like in one place, but I have to press this button. So I'm not ignoring you, okay? And so when we analysed the whole building, we said, okay, which is going to give us the best bang for buck in the beginning? And it was really, solar, well, not solar water, but basically the regulation says a maximum of 50% of hot water can be supplied by electric resistive means. So a traditional geyser, a traditional hot water system, you're only allowed up to 50% of hot water from that means. Otherwise, the rest has to be either renewable or gas or something, an alternative. And then the other thing we said, okay, let's look at the roofing, because that's where the maximum heat loss, heat gain is in a building. And so we did sort of windows up to a point, flooring up to a point, we did walls up to a point. But that was our starter standard, which is the one that's currently in place. So as I said, we're busy with the version 2. So we said, well, you know, we did the first one in 2011. Now we're busy with the next one. Why are we looking, the second one, we are looking at publishing it next year, early next year. It's quite way down the line. It's got stricter energy performance criteria, but we've tried to make it more user-friendly, because we found that the first one still shocks people a little bit. So we try to make it a little bit more user-friendly. So why do you imagine that we would now redraft that? You know, because we did such a good job. We should just sit on our laurels and say, we don't have to do this again because we've done it once already. But if you look at it, in our National Development Plan, it says that we must progressively strengthen energy efficiency criteria to achieve net zero carbon by 2030. So by 2030, we want all new buildings to be net zero carbon. That's in our National Development Plan. But the big word there is journey. We have to journey to there, because we can't have that. I mean, we'd love to have it now. I mean, now is the time to have it. But we have to do this journey so that we bring industry along with us. In South Africa, we've got a huge government subsidized and affordable housing sector. Now, one of the things we can't do is rush ahead so far that we leave this affordable housing sector behind. Everybody's on the journey with us. We have to make sure that the people who, you know, we spoke about energy poverty, but the poorest of the poor people who can't afford this, we can't leave them behind in this zero carbon journey. They have to be coming with us. So we have to do this progressively. We must bring all buildings with us. And we can't make these buildings so expensive that now people don't get housing. So that's one of the the realities of where we live. And again, please note, I'm speaking to you like this because hopefully there's lessons, joint lessons to be learned. I'm definitely not telling you that we did it right first time, because we definitely didn't. So it's supposed to be like, let's do a shared learning here, because it definitely was a journey. So in the Department of Environmental Affairs, from the Paris Accord, we said those are the carbon reduction targets. So it's, again, it all fits in with this journey that we're going on. Obviously, the carbon reduction is not just about buildings, it's about transport, industry, everything. So that is our targets for reduction of carbon. So 2011 comes, start putting the energy efficiency regulation in force. In 2012, all is well with the world, right? Because everybody does the right thing.
No.
Right?
No.
How is it in Kenya? Everybody just does the right thing? Well, in South Africa, no. So one of the challenges we actually came up with is that there's a big gap from having a regulation and a standard to compliance with a regulation and standard. So when we looked at, this comes from C40. Does anybody know about the C40 program? It's an international program where cities sign up for a low carbon future. We have 4 cities in South Africa that are C40 cities. They've done a lot of really, really good research, so I use their stuff often. So this is from C40, and this is really where they see what each of these interventions will bring into going forward as our low carbon. And one of the interesting things they came up with is in the city of Tshwane, which the old name is Pretoria, just by getting compliance to be better, we'll get a 23% saving. I mean, that's like there's a regulation there. Just by getting compliance, we'll get better energy efficiency and better energy savings. So we did a thing like, what's happening, and why aren't we complying? And we found out that really the building control officers, the building inspectors, and the plans examiners, it was a totally new concept to them. They had training, but at a certain level, and they still didn't really know, what does this actually mean for them? What does it mean when you walk onto a building site? You can see if a wall is built skew. You can, after many years, you can see when it's mechanically not sound. But how do you walk into a building and know that all the energy efficiency stuff is there? So we're in a program of training, because they need training. So with the launch of the new 10400XA, so version 2, we're going to probably do a national rollout of training for building control officers, building inspectors, and plans examiners, and a real practical training. So this makes more meaning, so we get a higher level of compliance in the regulation. So that's one of the things, and so that's what I say when I say to you it's lessons learned, it's things that I think we didn't expect a big gap would be in compliance. So what we did is we looked at, from the first National Energy Efficiency Strategy, we said, okay, where did we get to? And if you look, we achieved our potential savings in nearly every sector except for the commercial buildings and public sector. So we said, okay, what do we need to do about this? Okay. So in the new National Energy Efficiency Strategy, these are the goals. And as you can see, public buildings, the goal is to save 50% of energy on a 2015 baseline up to 2030. And for commercial buildings, 37%. So that's the new goal. Now, as you can understand, the economy is down. There's not a lot of new buildings. So, I love this picture. So, and as you can see, the new build energy use is really tiny compared to the existing building stock that we've got. So the question we had was, how do we get these existing stock buildings to be more energy efficient? because all building standards and regulations only apply to new builds. You can't do them retrospectively. So we had to look at, we can appeal to people's better judgment and say, please make your buildings energy efficient. How many takers do you think we'll have? A few. There are an enlightened few, but not that many. So that brought about the birth of SANS 1544, which is the Energy Performance Certificates. It's an initiative from the Department of Public Works, and just recently the regulation's gone out for public comment. Public comment's closed. So basically what it says, it mandates that all government buildings greater than 1,000 square meters must have an energy performance certificate in their foyer, and all private sector buildings above 2,000 square meters must have an energy performance certificate in their foyer. They've got 2 years, everybody's got 2 years to comply, and once you've got the energy performance certificate, it's valid for 5 years. Okay. So that's what it looks like. It looks like an energy label. You can go on. And that's the actual energy performance certificates. What it does, it takes out external security lighting and no parking areas or storage areas. So, and it's based on the actual utility bill. So it's no adjusted baseline. We've made it quite simple. Oh, and there's an independent third-party auditor must sign off that the information you've put inside your energy performance certificate is accurate. So again, looking at that position of energy auditor, we also looked at job creation and introduction into this whole energy efficiency market at a certain level. Not a low level, but at not quite a sort of M&V level. It's really an entry-level type auditor, which is also great, because it's the whole thing of doing a job creation program within another program. So, I've answered myself, but energy performance certificates. If you put an energy performance certificate in your foyer of your building, does that make you energy efficient? Obviously not. To be visible is always good, but it's your baseline, it's your starting point. So what the government is saying is that once everybody's got these energy performance certificates, when that validity, that 5-year validity is up, before you get your next one, they will mandate that your building, well, especially the government buildings, must be at a certain level. So all these, the other thing I didn't say was when we start with the energy performance certificates, all the kilowatt hours per square meter per annum is going to be sent to SANEDI, South African National Energy Development Institute. Is that right? Yeah, thank you. So all that information is going to be put into a building energy register, and from that we'll be able to determine where all these buildings lie and where all the government buildings lie. And from that the government can say, okay, we want all government buildings to be at least a level D, for instance. We don't know what that level is yet. And those buildings will have a certain time so that when they do their next energy performance certificate, it must be at that mid-level. So that is where the energy efficiency comes, is that this is the start of it, and they're going to say in the next sort of 2 years to get the performance, but in the next 5 years, ensure that your building energy performance certificate now looks better. So that's the plan behind it, and that's how we're going to get this bulk of this energy, the building stock, to become more energy efficient. Does it make sense to everybody? Cool. And I'm speaking to engineers, I don't know why I'm asking you if it makes sense. So, okay. But now we're looking at sustainable buildings. So, as I said, the one thing's drafted. Oh, the other thing is we're looking at, I didn't put it on the slide, is with the water efficiency standard being done, water performance certificates will follow sort of quite closely behind the heels of the energy performance certificates. The other thing the Department of Public Works has done is that they have created a green building framework policy. And what they're saying is every new government building that's built has to be built to this green building framework. And, or a 4-star, green star rated building. I'm not sure what green star rating, because I know there's LEED. In South Africa, we use LEED or Green Star. There is some BREEAM, but not really a lot. So but the bulk we use is Green Star rated buildings. The one South Africa's adopted the one that's similar to Australia. So, so what the Department of Public Works is saying is any new building has to either be built to this green norms and standards, green building norms and standards, or to a 4-star rated building. So we're also going to ensure that from now on, and it's again, it's the South African government trying to lead by example. You know, not to say to people, okay, you do it, but we're not going to do it. So the other thing is they lease a lot of buildings, so there's a lot of emphasis on green procurement, green leasing, and eco-labeling of materials. So that's the stuff we're working on at the moment with all of these.